This is another quick lesson just to go over some ideas of ways that you can store the different materials that you capture in this module as you step through your 7 levers, capturing the actions and activities that you're performing to improve each of your 7 levers right now. So the first one would be any physical, or as I'm calling it, analog documents. So examples of those would be printouts, photocopies, or the actual torn out pages of a magazine, newspaper, or whatever it is. Something physical that you can tangibly get a hold of. The most obvious way to deal with this, if you want everything in this physical form, and some people like to do that, is to use a folder or file box and just stuff it all in. Just make sure that things are grouped together by lever. So you could have one folder or file box per lever, or you could have a little plastic sleeve per lever, whatever you might want. Now, there's an extra layer to this, which is that if you take my tip from the Capture Techniques lesson, then you could digitize all of this material very quickly just by taking photographs with your phone. If you prefer things to be in a digital format, maybe you need to share them around a group of people, make copies, whatever, then taking a photograph with your phone is a really easy way of digitizing that material. As I said in Capture Techniques, you could use a scanner. There's all kinds of issues with using scanners though, and one of them is most people don't have one anymore. But we all have, or most of us have, a phone or have access to a phone with a camera on it. Now, once you have documents in a digital format, whether you photograph them with your phone or you have documents like Word documents or spreadsheets or whatever it might be in electronic format, then you need to store them. And there are now a number of technologies out there that allow you to store and share documents from a central repository. And that's quite important if you're working with other people. But also, even if you're not sharing them, the things that I'm going to suggest help you store and archive these things in the cloud so that they're safe and that you can refer back to them. You can even search them. So, one popular solution to store electronic documents, and again, as I said in Capture Techniques lesson, the examples of these things are things like emails that you've received or sent, photographs of any documents, the actual documents themselves in Word or other electronic formats. One of the most common systems these days is Google. A lot of people have Google Gmail email addresses, and when you have a Google account, then you have access to the Google storage system, which gives you 15 gigabytes of storage for free, which is quite a lot, more than enough to handle this task. And they have 3 different tools. They have Google Notes, which is just a general note capturing tool that allows you to capture quick notes. They have Google Docs, which allows you to store files and edit them online, like an online Word document, for example. And they have Google Drive, which is just a general storage area which you can dump anything, any kind of electronic file whatsoever. So photographs alongside documents, alongside spreadsheets, alongside PDFs, and so on. So that's quite a good solution. Microsoft have an equivalent system which works slightly differently, and that's called OneDrive. And also there's another completely independent company called Evernote. Now Evernote is a tool that Pete and I use all the time, and Evernote is incredibly powerful. It has individual apps on your desktop, your phone and your tablet, and it can use all of the tools at its disposal. So for example, if we were capturing digital documents, there's a document capture tool inside of Evernote that uses the camera on the phone to capture that document directly into Evernote. You can file it in the right filing area and label it and name it and everything all in one go. So it can make the capture process really, really slick. We highly recommend Evernote if you haven't got any the other tools, in which case use what you've got. So that's our tip for the digital versus the analog. One final point about storage is that we've created a Capture Worksheet, and there's a separate lesson to walk you through using that. But what it allows you to do is, as you capture something, you can make a note of what you've captured and where you've put it, and also any issues that you have with that particular activity that you're capturing the material for. So take a look at the lesson about the Capture Worksheet, and then you can use that as you go through and capture all of your activities for your 7 levers. we have created a tool for you to help you work through the capture step of your health check. The Capture Worksheet has some standard boxes on it. You're going to use one copy of this worksheet or one printed version of this worksheet for each lever. So you're going to write your business unit in there. You're also going to make a note of the lever that you're working on, and then you're going to enter in the date that you're doing the capture, just as a record for you to refer back to. At the moment, there are 3 columns in the Capture Worksheet. The first one is the activity or action. You're going to capture the activity that you might do. So you might say Google Ads, you might say Facebook ads, you might say print ad, you might say yellow pages, advertising. These are all things for your suspects lever, but you might also say margins and specifically margin supplier cost or margins staff costs. Those are examples of that finer granularity that I talked about earlier in another lesson, where we're looking at the individual channels. Whatever it is to label the things that you're capturing, you put that in the activity or action column. And then there's a central column, storage. That's where you write down how you've actually captured it. For example, you could write down Filebox, you could write down OneDrive, you could write down Google Drive, you could write down Evernote, however you actually stored it. And again, examples of that are in the storage techniques lesson, if you're not sure what your options are there. And finally, there's a notes column, and that is where we're going to write down any issues that we find or any specific gaps that we've identified. And remember, you can write anything in here. You don't just have to write gaps. If you identify that there's an opportunity for growth, something to make better, or if you identify that this lever is in fact blank, then that's what you can write in the notes column. Even if it's an individual channel of a lever that you think you're not addressing, so there's a blank or a better option there, make a note. We're going to triage all those notes in the correct step. So just make the notes as you go through. But this Capture Worksheet just gives you a visual reference and a quick record of what you are or have been doing, where you stored your notes, or the actual examples of those things, and finally any notes that you have against them. This will be our guideline when we go back to correct, and also it's our guide when we do the calculate step. We can go down this list and make sure that we have calculated values for each one of these activities, and in correct we can go down, and if we identify any issues or gaps, we can see if we need to address them at that time. Your exercise for this module is very simply to go through all of your 7 levers and capture all the activities that you're currently doing to improve each one of those levers. So you can refer back to all the work we've done so far. You can refer back to clarifying to make sure you're capturing the right things in the right areas of your business, to make sure that you understand what the boundaries of each lever are. And there are tips in this module about how to capture different types of information that support what you say about what you're doing about each one of those levers. As you go through, pick a storage method, and again there's a lesson in this module about storage, and so that you can store that evidence, and make an entry into your Capture Worksheet. Remember to use one sheet per lever and make a line entry for every action or activity you're undertaking and every example that you're storing, where you've stored it, and also if you identify any issues or gaps as you're capturing that material, things that you think are broken and can be easily fixed, or that you stop using but you don't really know why, and maybe it's worth starting using it again, or things that you're just plain not doing, you're not addressing this lever or this channel of this lever, or even if you have an idea at the time but you think you might be able to do something new to improve this lever. All that can be put into the Capture Worksheet as you work through. So go ahead, go capture your levers right now.